Hello folks, Dick Fairburn here. While this is primarily a gun, self-defense, shooting, hunting kind of channel, I occasionally talk about politics, and I think it's time to talk about the violence that's going on in this country. Because that may tie in with the Second Amendment and how we protect ourselves against some of the things going on in our communities. I think the violence in this country is in a very rapidly increasing downward spiral. And it's going to, I don't know where. Mass shootings in Minneapolis, Grand Blanc, Michigan. Young immigrants stabbed in Charlotte. Charlie Kirk assassinated in Utah. Attacks on ICE facilities across the country. You know, we saw that clip of 30-06 cartridges with hate ICE on just a few days ago. Is this the beginning of the civil war that we feared could happen last year but didn't? Some of the videos I did last year wondered just how far the ultra-left would go to try to stop Donald Trump from being reelected. They almost killed him, but really little else happened. No rioting. And now we're seeing the effects of that Trump derangement syndrome. He got back into office. And it's boiling over. The people committing these attacks they're beyond rational thoughts. They're crazy. In my opinion, they are legitimately mentally ill. But we've closed down all those facilities over the last few decades, so they're out in society. And their hate is being released as violence. Unfortunately, there's very little we can do to preemptively stop these random attacks, because they're coming from some of the nation's craziest people. Very difficult to pattern, very difficult to predict. I think Trump's push to repair our society as fast as possible is causing so many of these ticking time bombs to explode. In his first term, he kind of played along with the deep state. He didn't really know enough about how the system worked to truly change it, but he does now. And he is dead set on changing it completely as fast as he can. And I think he's right to do that. We must fix this country in the next 3 years, or we could still lose it completely. So stick around. I want to talk about if we can identify some patterns of behavior out there in this rash of violence and what we might do to prevent some of them. I want to announce to you that both versions of my book, Building a Better Gunfighter, are available now on Amazon.com. There's a Kindle book version of this for $9.95. There's the paperback copy for $19.95. Of course, sales tax is going to be added to both of those. Just search for Building a Better Gunfighter. When Charlie Kirk was assassinated, I was tempted to post my thoughts right away, but I decided to wait, and I wanted more information to come to light. Since then, I've done a couple of videos. Feel free to look back at them. Now, Charlie's killer is in custody. The court proceedings are beginning, but the conspiracy theories are insane. Everything from second shooters from a different direction to an exploding microphone on his shirt to new ones I probably haven't seen or heard of yet. Now, active shooter events happen all the time. I mean, it seems like we almost have one every day lately. Random killings, like the girl in Charlotte. Unfortunately, they happen all the time. But Charlie Kirk's murder was a true political assassination. Now, while Charlie was not himself a politician, he was a major factor in Trump's reelection. He brought in many, many young voters to the MAGA cause in percentages that Republican candidates have really never seen. Now, while Charlie's murder created a huge shockwave in the country, the violent rhetoric of our opponents is growing even more vocal. And the numbers that have been drawn to Turning Point USA since Charlie was killed are just staggering. I really feel positive that this country is headed a better direction quickly. But the virulent Trump haters in the increasingly radical Democratic Party, they're not cooling off their rhetoric yet. And they're not giving up their fight. I mean, we are currently in like day 2 of a government shutdown, which doesn't bother me. As far as I'm concerned, when the government shut down, they can't do stupid stuff. So a little bit of it's probably not a bad thing for periodically. But what they're fighting is to try to get benefits back for illegal aliens, people who shouldn't be here in the first place. If the Democrats truly believe that's what the people of this country want, then they're even crazier than we think they are. But you got to ask, is this the beginning of a wider, more violent war which is being launched by the radical left? Now, on a positive note, some of those people who laughed and were happy at Kirk's murder tried to blame it on President Trump and the supposed hate speech of our number one leader. A lot of those people have been fired for spreading their very real hate speech. Now, social media allows small, vicious people to become a big deal for a few minutes. And others are egged on by those silly posts that they put up. My last job before retirement as a public safety director, I saw our local police department regularly denigrated by idiots on Facebook. Now, we knew who the negative posters were. It was either some of our more regular customers at the police department or their idiot families. But the people out there in society reading those posts, they don't know about these people. They don't know their character. And we don't really have the ability to communicate what kind of people they are in sticking up for ourselves. But those people try to tear down what that police department did for the community. I came to the conclusion that Facebook and social media in general, it might be the Antichrist. I don't know. But it's here to stay. And it is the only form of news for some of the most violent of the people who are committing this recent wave of attacks. They only listen to people who think like them. We get accused of that same thing. But unlike them, we are not disturbed and we are not violent. They are. Now, it is a fact, not a transphobic rant, that much of the violence in the last few years has come from transgendered young people. Now, I'm not suggesting that trans folk are all inherently violent, but that, I don't know, is lifestyle the right word? That lifestyle has been promoted heavily, and they're being convinced that they are under attack, physical attack, from every direction. I don't see it, but in their eyes, simply not agreeing with them, they take to be a violent attack on them, which it is not. Now, for years, transgenderism was considered to be a mental illness, and in some parts of the world still is. But recently, the radical left has championed that lifestyle and even tried to force it on some of the youngest in our society, without the parents' knowledge. We must not be afraid to investigate possible threats from those on the transgender side of our community. The number of attacks committed by these people require us to take a close look, even if it offends people. The assassin in Utah hunted Charlie Kirk. He felt he had every right to stop him from further spreading his ideals, all the time labeling Charlie as the hater. And you can find lots of clips that make him sound to be that way, but if you then look for the entire clip, which has not been edited to their advantage, he encouraged free speech. I never saw him denigrate anybody on the clips that I've watched. He disagreed. He would tell them he thought they were wrong and why, but he did not denigrate them as people. Now, it's very easy to see where this culture of hate comes from. You only need to look to the Democratic politicians in Washington, D.C. These are the same ones who are promoting so-called studies which say, oh, over 70% of the violence in our country comes from white supremacists. Dig into those studies and look at them, and you will see that they are all structured to give you the kind of data they want to spread. Folks, the violence is coming from the left. But look at the people that I'm talking about here. Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, Dick Durbin, J.B. Pritzker, Maxine Waters. The list goes on and on. These prominent liberals hate this country. And they especially hate anyone who is successful at stopping their efforts to destroy this country. These people live on hate. I'm not sure they even need food or oxygen. Hate seems to nourish every need they have. And make no mistake, their goal is to destroy this country. They want to make it into their dream of a socialist, communist utopia, which has never existed anywhere in the world yet. But to accomplish that, they must first destroy our country as it is, and then try to rebuild it the way they want it to be. And they came close to reaching their goal. But I think Donald Trump's second term and his very powerful moves to fix things fast and dramatically, the leftists who still have two brain cells to rub together, they see that their plans are crashing before their eyes. And folks, they don't respond to that with logic. They respond to that with even more insanity. We must protect free speech rights. We must also redefine what level of hate speech reaches the level of an actionable threat. I was recently at my first committee meetings for the NRA Board of Directors, and during that time, someone in the Trump term suggested that, well, perhaps we should ban transgendered people from having guns. Well, I can tell you what the feeling of the NRA Board of Directors and the Institute for Legislative Action was. That's not right. We shouldn't ban any group of people in this country from having guns based on single aspects of how they behave. It has to be done because of their individual behavior, not a group behavior. So we're not looking to take anyone's rights, but we've got to protect our rights at the same time. Now, those of us who cherish the traditional values of this country were sickened by the violence we saw in 2020. That violence was fueled by the extreme hatred of those who want to destroy our country. They accuse us of initiating the hate. And I've always had a catchphrase for this. I say they accuse you of what they do. Psychologists call that reflection. Someone who is lying to themselves about their own behavior often accuses you of the very thing that they're doing themselves. They accuse you of what they do. And that's how extremists have spread their lies for centuries. The Trump administration recently declared Antifa as a domestic terrorist organization. Great. That allows more investigative tools. They also need to identify the organization behind these groups, and perhaps even more importantly, the funding of these radicals, because they are very well funded. Many of them are being paid to be there. That has to be against the law somehow. We need to identify these groups, we need to target their money, and we need to break them up. You see in the media, ever since the Kirk assassination, well, both sides do it. Both sides spread the hate. No, they don't. That's just the mainstream media of the left putting up smoke and mirrors. Our investigators must break down this lie, identify where the hate and violence is coming from, and take action against it. Now, we need to ramp up prevention. It's really the only way I see that we can survive this violent era. We need to encourage people to report even the seemingly most insignificant things they see that could be threats. As police, state, local, federal, we need to investigate those threats seriously and completely. And we need to take action whenever we can to interrupt an attack before it can happen. We might be pushing people's rights to the very limit when we do that. And we still won't stop them all, but it's the only chance we have to interfere with some of these attacks. I think we should establish a nationwide network of volunteers to help law enforcement with overwatch at high-profile conservative events where an attack could happen against us and our people. Police agencies could draw upon these volunteers to watch the crowds, watch rooftops, and other danger areas, and just report any possible threat they see. Why in the world did they not have rooftop observers in Utah at the Charlie Kirk event? Why did they not at least have a drone watching those rooftops? And that they would have known, hey, there's somebody in the roof and he might have a rifle. So at the very least, we get the principle behind cover and buy the time for law enforcement to make contact with that individual. Now, I wish just ordinary patriots could serve as volunteers, but frankly, police agencies don't have the time or the manpower to vet everyone who would volunteer. And we have to make sure that we vet the people who volunteer. I just had a meeting this week in my hometown. Retired police officers are known by the local law enforcement agencies. They don't need to be vetted. They could very easily double the number of eyes available to watch danger areas and report possible threats they see. And we're going to look at putting an example of that together here in our community. Last Sunday, as I watched the coverage of the Grand Blanc, Michigan church attack, I saw a notice on my phone that NYPD announced they were sending police assets to all the churches in the city, just as a precaution. That's the kind of thing I mean that these retired police officer volunteers could assist with. A whole lot of people called in from a phone tree to bolster the on-duty assets of a police department for a potential threat. Now, I'm not going to say we are at war yet, but I think we are seeing the precursor events which could explode into a cultural or political civil war in our country. Look to Britain. I think the Brits are about where we were 250 years ago. They're getting close to throwing off their government, which has become so oppressive to them. Okay, they've banned guns for the most part. You can still have them for hunting and some sport shooting. They're trying to ban knives, kitchen knives. Where does it stop? Now, there may come a time when our side has to resort to violence. But if we do that, our violence will be defensive in nature to ensure that free speech can still continue, not to stop free speech. And that is exactly what the left, what the haters are trying to stop. They're trying to stop us from telling the truth about them because they're losing political power at a rapid rate. And so they will fight ever more strongly to try to keep it. So let me know what you think. How much longer before the freedom-loving among us will need to answer a call to arms, to show up in defense of our city or our county, our state, our country? Would you be willing to help protect high-risk events? Not as police officers, not even necessarily as armed protectors, but merely trusted, trained observers who will then turn over what they see to the enforcers who protect and serve. Pray for the victims and the families of the senseless rash of left-wing violence we're experiencing. And make no mistake, it is left-wing violence. I'm not saying the right wing doesn't ever commit it. But when it does, it is the extreme right-wing folks who have done that. Pray for our country and our leaders as they continue their efforts to destroy the woke culture that has brought about what we're seeing today. God, please bless America. We need it. Thank you, folks, for watching these videos. If they're worthwhile to you, I ask you to subscribe, thumbs up, spread it around to your friends. Let me know what you think. There are a lot of people out there who disagree with me quite a lot. I never cancel comments. If you see a comment disappear from one of my videos, YouTube took it down. I don't. I welcome opposing viewpoints. So tell me what you think. most of all, go armed wherever and whenever you can. Y'all be safe out there. Okay, we got them both here now. You ready? Bud got one. Ginger got one. Oh, she missed it. She usually gets them, doesn't she, Bud? Okay, girl, last one. You ready? You ready? Yeah! That's all there is till next time.